So a few weeks back, I showed you how I made a fully featured top-down shooter using nothing but natural language and a tool called WebGPT, which deploys your project to these convenient no-code creative playgrounds. And we iteratively built our game up from the just core movement mechanics of the enemy players and the player to adding shooting mechanics. We even added supplemental game features like the survival time counter, as well as decrementing lives. And we capped it all off with a game over screen that had our survival time, as well as a click to replay function. Well, today I forked the project to a secondary playground, and I asked WebGPT to give me a summary of what the current game features were and where we stood, as well as planning out some proposed next steps of what we can add to the game. And right away I honed in on its suggestion of adding power-ups. Now, OpenAI just released their new GPT-4 Turbo model, and it put up some pretty impressive coding benchmarks. So to put the power of this new model to the test in WebGPT, we're going to try making these game upgrades without the use of Pro Mode, which normally communicates with back-end code review agents to help guide precision edits through a three-step multi-turn automation loop. Now, in the interest of not overwhelming the LLM and ensuring that we have an accurate implementation, we'll start small by just defining how we want the power-up to look, how I think it should move about the environment, and we'll get into actual player collision and how it's going to augment the actual player experience in a follow-up step. Now, in the past video, you might have noticed we built in three-step processes. This time it only took one external action and it spits us out a convenient playable link. This is because we're not building in Pro Mode yet. So in our first step, it did successfully add the green power-up. It is meandering about. We're all highlighted in green as well. And of course, there is no collision yet, as is the plan. So I'm going to go ahead and take a screenshot. This is the GPT-4 vision model that powers WebGPT. Sometimes just by adding a vision dimension to your feedback, it helps focus the LLM's attention on making an accurate implementation. And as you can see, that green glow effect around all the different objects is now gone. The player power-up is still there, still no collision, but this is much better. I did notice in this step that the power-up is still visible on the game over screen. And just like in the last video, when we clean up all of the game elements on a game over screen, we need to make sure that the power-up is added to that list. So it spits out one more playable link. Let's give it a test. 1, 2, 3, much better. I gotta say, this is getting pretty impressive. GPT-4 Turbo was able to do 3 separate one-shots back-to-back accurately. All right, so now that the visual and spatial elements of the power-up are working correctly, it's time to add the actual functionality. So we're gonna start by spawning a countdown timer of 30 seconds in the top right corner, and we're gonna actually have this augment the player cannons so that there's multiple bullets that fire at a single time. And then we're also gonna define a cooldown timer between when the next power-up should spawn, and we should be all set. Now, admittedly, this was an awful lot to add in a single step, and despite WebGPT thinking we're in Pro Mode, we aren't editing in Pro Mode quite yet, so we don't have the addition of all those back-end AI agents to help keep the guardrails on, so we ended up introducing a runtime error. But you'll notice that the WebGPT playgrounds actually tell you to instruct your LLM to check the error logs. You can confirm that your LLM did by actually clicking on the action, and it tells you exactly what the reason was. And because I also asked the LLM to activate Pro Mode this time around, it's going to be much more accurate and chain together multiple requests to validate all of its changes in a single round. Now I'm going to run the playback at 2x speed just to get through it quicker, but you'll notice that we start with one bullet, hit our power-up, bam! Our power-up activation countdown timer is added to the top right corner, and it's counting down from 30 seconds. And when our power-up timer expires, we are back to single round shot yet again. You can try WebGPT today in the ChatGPT Plus custom GPT store.